Do you ever wonder why you keep messing up Portuguese gender even after all those sticky notes you put around the house and word lists? When the moment comes and you say carrinho to your mechanic and get a funny look, you know it's time to try something new. So today I'll help you tune your ear to gender in real speech to help you avoid those awkward mix-ups and simply enjoy a conversation. One thing I find fascinating is how my unschoolers see gender. The other day, one questioned me about this phrase, à minha esquerda, to my left. He wrote it correctly, but was second-guessing himself. Bearing in mind he is a man, he wondered if it should be ao meu esquerda, and so the pronoun would mirror that. The thing is, to my refers to left, and since esquerda is a feminine noun, his initial instinct of saying à minha esquerda was actually correct. Which makes me think, do you know why gender is so important in Portuguese? Basically, it shows how we perceive the world. For a Portuguese native, other than people and animals that intrinsically have a gender, nouns have a gender too. But it's not like a boat is a she like in English. Who knows why? To me, that doesn't make any sense. It's the word itself, not the thing, that has a gender. It's that final O in barco that tells me it's a masculine noun. But you need to start seeing beyond a grammar rule that affects everything you say about o barco. Since barco is masculine, I start seeing it as a male thing. Let me say this in a different way. Words have a gender in Portuguese, which is why we perceive things as male or female. Okay, now that I've explained how gender impacts the way we see things around us, let's see how we can increase your chances of choosing the right gender, even when the word doesn't end with an A or an O. When in the middle of a conversation where you cannot see the words written down, you only have your ears and context to help you, right? And have you ever noticed that the speaker will give away the gender? One typical example is the word avó and avô, which a lot of people struggle to differentiate. Thing is, we rarely say them in isolation. We're more likely to say o meu avô and a minha avó, and that's the key. It's realizing there's more words around the noun which give away what its gender is. Let's take the word viagem as another example. Maybe you've drilled the rule that words ending in gem tend to be feminine, but let's be honest, you have a lot of things to remember, and an exception to gender in Portuguese may not be your top priority. So you have no clue. But if you pay attention to the surrounding words, the native speaker will give the gender away. Now listen. Há 10 anos fiz 2 viagens fantásticas pelo Sudeste Asiático. Here you have duas and fantásticas to indicate viagem is a feminine noun. See if you can hear the difference. 2 viagens fantásticas, 2 viagens fantásticos. 2 viagens, 2 viagens. Viagens fantásticas, viagens fantásticos. We smile more when words are feminine. Now, one really funny way of training your ear to spot the correct gender is by looking at nouns that have two. Exactly. A lot of words can be either feminine or masculine, and the meaning will change. Knowing the correct gender of a word means you can avoid embarrassing situations such as this, where you mix up the word o capital, as in money, and a capital, as in city. Onde é o capital de Portugal? Essa pergunta vale ouro. Now, the good news is that you can prepare yourself for upcoming conversations by listening to a lot of native content that comes alongside text. It would be madness to try doing this in real conversations before some preparation. Below, you'll find a link to my mini tuga, which includes 6 native resources, most of which can help you train your ear to spot and differentiate u and e at the end of words. But let's look at another example. What about this scenario? You are finally invited for dinner at your neighbor's. You've been working your Portuguese for ages. You're ready, and yet hours of flashcards review didn't really prepare you for this. The moment your neighbor asks you, "Pode trazer o jarro d'água para a mesa?" you feel like a good citizen at last. Except you didn't quite hear the gender of o jarro. In fact, you only knew a jarra, as in a flower vase, which is why your neighbor looks at you inquisitively when you sit down to eat. Onde pôs o jarro d'água? If only you had paid more attention to the words around jarro, you had o jarro, ends in a discrete U, which is different from the closed A in jarra. O jarro, a jarra. And then you had d'água, hinting at something other than a flower vase. Speaking of embarrassing moments, the other day, one of my unschoolers said o carrinho to her car mechanic, when what she wanted to say was a carrinha. In case you don't know, a carrinha is a station wagon, while o carrinho is a shopping cart or play car. That faux pas is one she won't ever make again. Still, she or even you may be very surprised to hear a Portuguese say livre. Now you are confused because you're sure book, livro, doesn't make any sense here, especially because of the intonation. Did you notice I said livre ending with an A and not livro ending with an O? Also, my intonation was a bit odd. Again, livre, this is an interjection, a form of soft swearing, if you will, that shows relief. Livre, ainda bem que não fui à rua ontem. Rejection, beijar sapo. Livre, prefiro ficar a sonhar com o meu príncipe encantado. Or even disgust. Beber isso. Livre? Okay, we're changing the tone a bit for the next one. Two words you want to keep straight gender-wise are o luto, the mourning, and a luta, the fight. If you hear someone say ele ainda tá de luto, it's likely you won't hear de or the u at the end of luto, which I know is frustrating, but on the other hand, it's an indication you didn't hear luta, fight, so it must have been something else. This is why knowing what you're likely not to hear is so important. That means you can find native content that includes text and audio and focus on that. Again, you can find examples in my mini tuga. There's a link below the video if you want to check it out. Another option is to stick with me a little longer and hear me say some words side by side. O caixa, a caixa. But if you need a change, just move on to this video. A violeta, o violeta. O guia, a guia. O ponto, a ponta. A minha irmã, o meu irmão. Quantas viagens, quantos dias. Uma cidade linda. Um problema bicudo. Dias compridos. As tuas fotos.